Hi, everybody. Mrs. Phillips here, one of the 7th grade teachers at FCA. Congratulations on reaching the last test of semester 1. This is the Unit 8 test review that we're going to go over some practice problems together in order to get you better prepared for the Unit 8 test. Real quick, I just wanted to remind you that in the next lesson, your Unit 8 test, there are 3 things that you have to do. The first thing is the Unit 8 test. After that, you're going to see a study guide for the final exam. And then lastly, the final exam. So all 3 of those are in the same last lesson. Make sure that you complete all 3 of them in order to finish the entire course. And then, of course, reach out to your teachers if you have any questions. All right. So these problems are taken from the Unit 8 practice test. I'm going to walk you through a few of them to get you ready for the actual test. So here we go. The first thing that we're going to look at is solving one-step equations with addition and subtraction. Excuse me. And this first problem says, which of the following equations has the same solution, meaning the same x value, okay, as the equation x plus 1/2 equals negative 1/4. So in order to solve this, we're going to have to figure out what is x equal for this equation that they give us, and then figure out the rest. So let's take a look at, I'm just going to write it off to the side here. So we've got x plus 1/2 equals a negative 1/4. Again, with these videos and with these problems, you should be using your math notebook to work out these problems with me. You can always pause the video and work it out and then come and back and play the rest so that you can check to see if you got it right, or rewind it if you missed something. The point is to practice, not just to get the answers, right? So anytime we're dealing with equations, you have to be thinking about the inverse operation. And the inverse operation is the opposite operation, okay? So inverse means opposite. In this case, we're trying to get x by itself. That's how we solve equations. And we have a plus 1/2 next to the x. We want to get rid of this plus 1/2 by doing the opposite. So the opposite of addition would be to subtract, and we're going to subtract 1/2. You always want to set up your equations with a line down the middle. Sorry, it's not perfect. Middle of the equal sign here. And that is because we want to keep everything balanced on both sides of this line. We have to keep it equal in order for it to work. Let me just move myself out of the way here so I have enough room. Okay, so we're subtracting 1/2 on either side in order to get rid of it. Remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do the exact same thing to the other side. These halves cancel each other out. Plus 1/2 minus 1/2, those would be equal to 0. We're left with x. Remember, that's our goal, to get x by itself. And so on this side, we've got a negative 1/4 minus 1/2. In order to subtract fractions, you're going to need to get a common denominator. So this 1/2 can be changed into fourths. Let me grab a different color here. And we can change this by multiplying it by 2, right? 2 times 2 will give us 4. Oops, sorry, I see it's cut off on the screen a little bit. Hold on 1 second. Oh, it's not going to let me adjust it. Okay, we'll make it work. 1/2 will be multiplied by 2. I'll squeeze it in there, and then I'll rewrite it on this side. So really, this is a minus 2/4. Okay, all I did was change it to a common denominator. 1/2 is the same thing, is equivalent to 2/4. Now I can go ahead and subtract because I have common denominators. So 1/4, a negative 1/4, I should say, minus another 2/4. Okay, altogether they're both negative, so the answer is going to be negative, and it's negative 3/4. Because they're both negatives, you essentially put them together, you combine them. And we're looking for something else that has a solution of negative 3/4, okay? Now, we do also have some decimals here, so it would be important to recognize that 3/4 is also equal to 0.75. And you could do that on the calculator, right? You could do 3 divided by 4, and it would be a negative, since the original answer is negative as well. All right, so we need to find, is it A, B, C, or D that also equals negative 3/4 or negative 0.75. So again, you're drawing your line down the middle of that equal sign. We want to make sure we're doing the opposite operation, right? The inverse. So instead of subtracting 0.70, we're going to add 0.70. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do the other. This will cancel each other out. We're left with x. Remember, that's our goal, to get x by itself. And so we go ahead and we add these together. It's a 0.05, negative 0.05, plus 0.70. So because the signs are different, the rule says that you have to subtract them. You can grab the calculator if you need it. So we're going to subtract these amounts. We've got 0.70 minus the 0.05, and that gives us a 0.65. And we're going to take the sign of the greater number. So since 0.70 is greater, the 7 in the tens place here is greater, this would be a positive 0.65, which does not match. I'll erase that actually. It does not match the answer we're looking for. Okay, so we got to keep going. All right, so for this one, we've got plus a half. Again, we want to do the opposite. So instead of adding a half, the opposite, like we did before, would be subtracting a half. Whatever we do to one side of the equation, you got to do the other side. Keep it balanced and equal on both sides. These guys cancel each other out. We're left with x. Again, we have different denominators, so we're going to have to change this. Again, 1/2 is the same thing as 2/4, right? You can multiply it by 2, so this would be equal to negative 2/4. So if I have 5/4 minus 2/4, I'm left with 3/4. Now you might say, oh, that's the answer, but be careful. Remember, we're looking for a negative 3/4. So unfortunately, it looks similar, but it is not negative. So therefore, that will not work. All right, here we go for this one. We've got a minus 1/4. So we're going to do the opposite of that, which would be to add 1/4. Again, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I'm adding 1/4. We're left with x because these guys cancel each other out. 1 whole plus 1/4 is not going to work because that's going to be over 1 whole, or over 1 whole. So 1 and 1/4. Unfortunately, that does not work. So by default here, it should be letter D, right? It's the only one that's left. So let's make sure. We're going to draw a line down the middle. Instead of adding 1.5, we need to subtract 1.5. Remember, the inverse or the opposite is how we get rid of these things. I'm going to do the same thing over here, minus 1.5. These guys cancel each other out. We're left with 0 there, and x comes down. Remember, our goal is to get x by itself. And then we've got different signs again. So take your calculator if you need to. Excuse me, sorry. And because they are different signs, I've got a positive and a negative, I need to find the difference between them. I need to subtract. So 1.5 minus 0.75, and that gives me 0.75, right? I'm taking the sign of the larger number. In this case, the 1.5 is larger because it has a whole number versus 0. And so this is going to be a negative 0.75. And that is our correct answer. Letter D has the same solution as our original answer over here up top. All right, number 2. So this one is asking, very similar, but it's asking us to use multiplication and division to solve these one-step equations. And this one is asking which equation has a different solution than the rest. Again, the only way to solve this is to do the work. You have to work them all out to see which one is different. So, same idea, you have to use the inverse operation or the opposite operation to get rid of whatever is with the x. And so we want to get x by itself, right? Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. Will it let me? There we go. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, so we're going to start by drawing the line down the middle of your equal sign again. Okay. Again, you should be working these out in your math notebook so you have them to look back at. Don't just sit and watch the video and don't do any work. Okay. So x divided by -2 is what this means. X over -2. Again, the fraction bar means division. We want to do the opposite of division, which would be to multiply. And so I'm going to multiply on both sides by this -2 to get rid of it. Okay. I'm just going to stick it off to the side here. So -2 and then times a -2 on this side. These guys cancel each other out. I'm left with x and 2 times a -2. 2 times 2 would be 4. However, I have different signs. Remember, different signs when multiplying together gives you a negative answer. So x equals -4. So again, we got to do the rest to see what is different, okay? This 16 times x is what this means, 16 next to x. The opposite of multiplying is going to be to divide. So again, start with your line down the middle. We want to divide by 16 on both sides to get rid of it. This gives us the x by itself. Those cancel each other out. And then 64 divided by 16. Again, if you need to, use your calculator. It's totally fine. You're going to have a calculator on your state test. So, I would love for you to know the fact, of course, but if you don't, then just do it in the calculator. Totally fine. Okay, so x equals 4 in this case. Unfortunately, those do not match, right? We're looking for, so one of them has to be right. So, option C here. Again, we're going to draw our line down the middle. -12x. Again, that means multiplication. When the number is next to the variable, it means multiply. We're going to divide to do the opposite and get rid of that -12. These -12s cancel each other out. We're left with x. 48 divided by a -12 will give us a -4. So far, A and C are matching, and it looks like B might be different from the rest. So let's take a look. I draw my line down the middle. Again, x over 4 means dividing, so x divided by 4. We want to do the opposite of that, which would be to multiply by 4. Sometimes, and I wrote the x over here for multiplying, but sometimes you're going to see them put a dot. So be aware that this, sorry, I'm trying to make it big enough so you can see it. This dot, okay, also means multiplication. So the dot on both sides, okay, would mean that they're multiplying by 4. So just get in the habit of recognizing that dot means multiply. So these 4s cancel each other out. We're left with x. And -4 times -1 times 4. 1 times 4 will give us 4. Since the signs are different, it is negative. So we've got negative, 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 and the only one that is different from the rest would be option B because it is positive. All right, going on to number 3. This says Nick bought groceries for N dollars. He had a coupon for $15.50 off. He paid $34.63, including tax, for the groceries he purchased. Which equation represents the original cost of groceries Nick bought? What was this amount? So with these types of equations or questions, you really have to think about the individual pieces like little clues and put them together in order to figure out what would make sense, right? So let's think about this for a second. He bought groceries for N dollars, right? So he's spending N dollars. However, he has a coupon, which means it's going to be taken off. It's going to be a minus $15.50, right? When you have a coupon, they take money off your total. So that's going to be minus his coupon, $15.50. And then they give us what he actually paid. So the total groceries minus his coupon should equal this $34.63. That's how much he paid at the register, okay? So I'm looking, first off, for this equation, okay? Now you got to look very carefully because they look very similar. Right away, I would use some test-taking strategies and get rid of the options that don't have a minus. So this plus and this plus for B and D don't make any sense, okay? Now, look again carefully which one is set up in the correct order, how we have it. It should be letter A. Now we want to make sure that this is actually correct though, the $50.13. So we can do that by solving this. Remember, we want to get n by itself, so the opposite of minus 1550 would be to plus 1550, right? We got to do that to both sides. And the reason this works is because really, right, he should have paid that $15.50. It was a coupon. So we're adding it back on to see what the original total was. So N, and then grab your calculator, save us some time here. And we've got 3463 plus the 1550. And that gives us what we're looking for, that $50.13. So option A would be correct. Again, you have to use the clues in the problem to help you piece it together, okay? The total groceries, that's what I started with. I took off his coupon, so minus the coupon, right? And then this is what he actually paid, which is what happens at the register when you go grocery shopping. Okay, so for number 4, this says, which real-world problem can be modeled by the equation 2/3 x plus 13 equals 29? So these are kind of tricky because you have a lot to read through and a lot to kind of piece together to figure out which one would match. Right away, I'm noticing that option D doesn't even mention the 2/3. So Vanessa wants to save money for a new backpack that costs $29. She has saved $13. How long will it take her to save the money? There's no mention of the 2/3, so there's no way that it could match 2/3 x plus something else equals 29. So again, use your test-taking strategies and eliminate answers when you have tricky problems like this that don't make sense. There's usually at least one, sometimes two answer choices that are kind of like you can get rid of them right away, okay? Then we're left with 3 to look at. So let's start with A. It says Lewis needs to bring 29 oranges to a party. So we do have 29 there being the total. He has 2/3 of the oranges. So that would mean 2/3 of 29. So you got to be careful here. 2/3 of X means 2/3 of something unknown. All right, yeah, they have to match. It says his brother will get another 13 oranges, which would make sense, the plus 13. How many oranges does Lewis have? Well, really, they're asking you to just find 2/3 of the total amount of oranges is 29. That would not match with what's here because 2/3 has to be 2/3 times something unknown. We already know how many oranges he needs, which is that 29. So this would not work either, okay? Letter B says Gabriel bought a new pair of shoes for $29. This is $13 more than, so there's a clue there. The more than would mean add 13, which matches with our equation up here, okay? More than 2/3 of the cost of his old shoes. So thinking about, right, 2/3 times something that's unknown, Gabriel bought a pair of new shoes for $29. We don't know the unknown is this old, or we don't know the price of the old shoes. This is the unknown. So we could use X to represent the price of the old shoes, which would mean 2/3 times X, the price of the old shoes that we don't know what it is, right? Plus $13 will have to equal what he paid for those shoes. So far, this is making sense as our answer choice, okay? Now, letter C, of course, we want to make sure, right? If you do 2/3 of your homework problems today and 13 problems tomorrow, how long will it take you to complete 29 problems? So again, thinking about, do we have something that's unknown, right? 2/3 of your homework problems Well, we know that you have 29 problems. So really this is 2/3 times 29, not 2/3 times X, something that's unknown. So letter C, while it does have all the numbers, does not make sense because there's no unknown, okay? 2/3 not times something that we don't know. So the best option here would be letter B, which matches because it would be 13 more. So that's your plus 13. 2/3 the cost of his old shoes, that would be the 2/3 times X, has to give us a solution of 29 or a total of 29. So option B is the correct answer here. Last question, and this is talking about writing and solving two-step equations. So for this one, it says Mira's cell phone bill was $412. She had to pay an activation fee of $100. It also costs $52 per month, so a lot of keywords here, for the phone. How many months does this bill cover? Identify the operations needed to solve this problem. So in this problem, they're not actually asking you to solve it. They're just asking you what steps would you take to solve it. Like you don't need a final answer. However, in order to kind of understand this, I'm going to show you how to write the problem and solve it. Okay. So Mira's cell phone bill was $412. That's going to give you a big clue that this is the total. When you're setting up a two-step equation, the format is usually, they write it as P times X equals Q, or plus Q equals R. Okay, it's just the format. So something times X plus or minus, it could be something else, has to equal the total. R represents the total. All right. So whatever the total is, I would start with that first. In this case, it is $412 for her cell phone bill. Okay. The P times something else, the P times X, has to be something per month or per week or per hour. It has to be multiplied by something. Okay. In this case, it's $52 per month, meaning every month she is going to pay this $52 over and over and over and over again. The activation fee is just a one-time thing that it would be added on, right? So think about which one fits into which spot here. Something being multiplied by itself over and over and over again, and then something that's just being added on one time. The activation fee is the plus Q, so plus 100, because she's just paying that one time. And the $52 per month would be the $52 times X, X representing the number of months. You don't know how many months. That's what the question is asking. How many months would be the X? Okay. So now that we have this set up, again, the question is asking what steps would I take to solve this, right? So line down the middle is how we always start these. We want to, or you always want to start with the addition or subtraction. Okay, you want to get rid of that first. So in this case, I've got a plus 100. The opposite of plus 100 would be to subtract 100. Just like the other ones, the one step, you do the same exact thing on one side of the equal sign and the other. Okay. This cancels out the 100s. We're left with 52x. That's going to come down. And then 412 minus 100, we could do that using mental math, and that's going to be 312. Okay. Now, what you got to do is just think about this as a new equation to solve, right? So now 52 times x is what this means. We always want to do the opposite. The opposite of multiplying by 52 would be to divide by 52. Again, whatever we do to one side, we got to do to the other. So divide by 52 on both sides. These guys cancel each other out. And I'm left with x equals, again, grab that calculator, right? So that's 312 divided by 52, and that will give us 6. So what this means is that it will cost her $412 for 6 months of her cell phone service, okay? Now, going back to the answer choices, they asked us what steps would you need to do. So let's look. This was step number 1. What did I do? I subtracted on both sides, right? So again, looking for one of the answer options that will match what we did. Subtraction, subtraction. Get rid of the ones that don't make sense, right? B and D are not right. And then in the second step down here, I did the opposite, which was to divide. So I'm looking for something that says, first I subtracted, then I divided. And the correct option would be letter A. First I subtracted, then I divided. All right, that is it for the practice for review for Unit 8. I hope that helped. Again, if you missed something, go back and rewatch it. You can always start the problem and try to do it yourself, and then look and watch for the solution. If you have questions, make sure that you are reaching out to your math teacher. We are here to support you, and we want to make sure that you're doing well to finish off the semester strong. All right, I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.